What was the dumbest thing you got punished for during school? When I was in school, I was usually home before my mom got back from work. She got home one day when I was 15 and I wasn't to be found. She tried calling 4 or 5 of my closest friends, my grandma, etc., in a vain attempt to find me. Worried sick, I'm sure. About 6:30 p.m. I strolled into the kitchen to a barrage of yelling. Where have you been? You are grounded. I don't care if you go somewhere, but you have to leave a note or let me know when you leave. Mom, I wasn't feeling well, so I went up to my room to sleep. I don't care. You need to leave a note. I was in my room. For the next week all my friends' parents were asking, so where were you? Your mom was really worried. You need to let her know where you're at. I was in my room. TL. Doctor, I was in my room. When I was younger I wanted to walk down the street to hang out with a friend. I asked my mom inside the house and she said okay, just ask your dad first, so I walk outside to my dad talking to some neighbors in the yard and ask him and he said yeah, that's fine. I'm down at my friend's house and his dad comes in and tells me my parents just called and told me to come home ASAP. So I walk home and get punished by my parents. Turns out my dad claims I never got his permission or told him anything. TL. DR. I got my punished because my dad is either forgetful or doesn't pay me attention. We have the same life. I was grounded for over a month for losing a library book. I had looked all over for it, but I couldn't find it anywhere. My oldest sister had just moved out, so I asked her if she accidentally packed it up by accident. She said no. My mom decided she would teach me a lesson and ground me until I could find it. I kept insisting it was nowhere in the house. Finally, well after a month of not being able to do anything but go to school and come home, my sister calls my mom and tells her she has my library book. It was in a box that she had left unpacked. Kind of relevant, but the library at my old elementary school let me check out a damaged book and then had the audacity to charge me for it. They got their book back, but I didn't pay. My mom literally kicked me out because a shirt that she bought when I wasn't with her didn't fit me. No, I'm not kidding. It was during my senior pictures in HS. I took some with my horse, and she had bought this neon green long sleeve button up for me to wear. I knew it wouldn't fit. I told her it wouldn't fit, but said to bring it with us anyways. I took it to the park where the photographer tried it but couldn't pin it enough to get a nice picture. Upon declaring it hopeless, my mom stormed out of the park and went home, leaving my sister, myself, my horse, and a photographer to finish the day. I get home that night and she won't say a word to me. The next afternoon she storms into my bedroom screaming about how no one appreciates her and told me I was an ungrateful being to pack my crap and leave. So I did. We haven't spoken in 2 years. I tried to make nice in an email about a year ago and she responded saying it was my fault and all I had to do was take a good picture. She needs therapy. Background. Well, due to her dating a man that was heavy into drugs when I was 11, she pretty much checked out on her 4 kids for about 3 years. I told her at 14 that I wanted to go live with my dad. My older brother and sister were already there, and she said I wasn't going anywhere. Bought me the horse a year or so later knowing it would keep me around. I paid for everything I could while keeping A's and B's in HS, working 25 hours a week for minimum wage, and paying for lessons, tack, etc. But she did help me out with him. I thanked her multiple times a week and she seemed to be settling into semi-normalcy, then bam. I should note she's never been quite normal. She hoards animals, has upwards of 30 something dogs that I know of ATM. She and my sister no longer speak either, and my sister has called animal control on her multiple times. In unrelated news, my father has her back in court cause we found out the college money they set aside for us before their divorce isn't gone like she said it was. She had it in the stock market and turned my 30k into well over 50, and now she doesn't want to give it up. One time me and my sisters were playing in the backyard. We were really young, I'd say around 6, 8, and 10, me being the oldest. We were fighting and arguing in the backyard and I called one of my sisters stupid. The other sister picked up this big butt boulder Freck Rock and threw it at my face. It hit me on the nose. I'm crying and freaking out, going into hysteria because I see crazy amount of blood gushing out of my nose. I'm scroze. I'm scroze. I'm scroze. I'm scroze. I'm scroze. I'm scroz, 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 I walk out to the living room and see my sisters watching TV and having a fun time. My parents call me into my room and ask me what happened. I told them the truth and I got beat down because I called my sister stupid. My sisters got off scot-free. TL. Dr. Freck Rocks. The summer after 6th grade, I got grounded for 2 months because one of the neighbor kids threw a rock at and dented my stepdad's truck. I was a couple yards over playing with some friends. I looked over towards my house and I saw this girl and her brother, that lived directly across the street, tossing rocks into the field next to my house. Well, this stupid girl either had really bad aim or had it out for me, and one of the rocks she threw hit my stepdad's truck pretty hard. I ran over to it and saw it was dented, so I found him in our backyard to tell him what happened. He was furious. And then the little brat showed up and told him I was with her and put her up to doing it. When I was like 2 houses away with my friends, I got grounded for 2 months and the girl that did it got off the hook. Dat logic. Went to church one day with my mom when I was in my mid-teens. On the way out the door we were saying our goodbyes to the other congregants, and I remember an old lady asked me some questions and I politely responded. I can't remember the content of the conversation at all, just that it was ordinary small talk. Full stop. Flash forward to home and my mom will not speak to me. I have no idea why. She's out furiously digging in the garden. I finally go out and confront her and she starts screaming about how I embarrassed her in front of the old lady at church. But she couldn't be specific about what exactly I had said wrong. Freaking unstable parents. Man, you never know what you'll get. Your mom sounds like a very insecure person. My stepmom kicked me out of my own house. I was there 9 years before her stupid butt got there, because she found and read my diary. I was a senior in high school and I had written about losing my virginity a month and a half before I turned 18. She said my little brother found my diary and it happened to be open to that spot. She wrote me a 6-page letter about how my father would be so disappointed in me and that I shamed him and should find a place to go. I freaking hate her. Her biological children can do no wrong. But, apparently, I'm the Antichrist. It doesn't justify her actions, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was afraid that your dad cared about you more than her, so got rid of you the best way she could. I grew up in a strict Pentecostal home church, speaking in tongues crazy Christians. My brother and I, when we were probably 12, him, and 9, had a new stopwatch. Free cereal toys were the crap back then. My mom and dad were members of the choir, so they had a perfect view of me and my brother staring at the stopwatch during church. My dad leaves the choir in front of 300 plus people, pulls out both out of our seats, takes us to the bathroom, and spanks both of us with his belt. His reasoning for the abuse? We were timing God. That was the only time either of us were hit with a belt, and hardly the worst thing we'd ever done. At the time I was 11 or 12 and we lived in Mexico. My sister was 15-16. Okay to drive at the age. We lived on a family owned farm about 5 minutes out of town, so we would either drive to school, my sister, or walk about 2 miles to catch the bus. Well, my sister was the definition of spoiled brat. She didn't have to work on the farm, she got money handed to her, and I did the exact opposite. Woke up at early hours to help milk the cattle and such. This paid off later in life. Anyways, one day after school she was supposed to pick me up. Right across from my school there was an arcade. I mean old school arcade. King of the Fighters was my game. That and football. We'd make bets. I could spend hours and completely enjoy being a kid instead of working my butt off on a farm. So she was supposed to pick me up and she didn't. So I started playing at the arcade. An hour or 2 went by and my friend who lived literally right next door to it invited me over for dinner. I stayed for an hour or 2 and played marbles. By now it's around 7 or so, and I decide to hit up the arcade and wait for her. Mind you, I learned quickly to listen to my parents. When they said she will pick you up, I waited. I knew the last bus was at 8, so I decided to take it and walked 2 miles home. When I got home my sister was watching TV and my mom ripped me and I got spanked by a belt for not getting picked up. Turns out my sister forgot about me and I got in trouble for not coming home sooner. I honestly without a doubt still hold that against my parents. Now my sister has a hard time keeping a job, still lives with mother and is an all-around slob. I feel sorry for her future husband. She can't cook, clean or work and is not attractive enough to find a rich husband. Karma. Sweet sweet karma. I hold a size admin position at work and surf Reddit all day long. My stepmom was abusive. She never allowed me out of my room for anything besides school. She got me into a crappy school while my brother, who was coddled, went to a private school. I was a good child, but my stepmom told my dad lies about things I didn't do just so I can stay out of her face in my room. I had nothing to do in there. I wasn't even allowed to sit on my bed because a bed is for sleeping. So for about 2 years all I did was sit on the floor and stare at a wall. Food was delivered to my room, but it was crappy and different from theirs. She became a dictator to my dad also, so he started drinking after 7 years being sober. He is sober now. My stepmom was an absolute bee, and my dad caught on to her lies and cursed her out, packed his stuff, and left. I had to stay at her house for a day more while my dad unpacked, so the day I left I wrote with big letters on her wall with a red marker C. She deserved it and she is in jail now. When I was younger, maybe 10 or 11, my dad would cook a huge breakfast each morning even when no one was hungry. It was just me and my brother every morning with a huge plate of crap. He would usually cook over easy eggs, bacon, ham, pancakes, toast, and hash browns. I freaking hate hash browns. And he knew this but insisted I eat that crap anyway. One day I couldn't eat all of my food even when I told him I wasn't hungry. He yelled at me for about 30 minutes. No lie. Punished me for about a week and told me I couldn't hang out with my friends or watch television. What? Oh, and he saved that plate of food for another day. Another time, and I will never forget this. He made steaks for everyone. These huge freaking steaks. I came into the kitchen, got me a plate and got my steak from him. I poured some steak sauce on the side because who doesn't like steak sauce? I finished the steak, for once, but I had a bit of steak sauce left over on my plate. When I went into the kitchen to wash my dishes, he grabbed my arm that was holding the plate and screeched at me about the wasted steak sauce. He grabbed a spoon out of the kitchen drawer and told me to eat it. Man. Not me, but my dad. When my dad was 5 or 6, he lived in Chicago with his parents and older sister. One day, someone spray painted Frick, Joe and Chris on their house. My dad was Joe, his sister was Chris. He asked his parents what Frick meant, and to spare his feelings, they told him, "Oh, Frick just means they really like you and want you to know you're a great person." So my dad and his sister get this great idea. They have a lot of people they want to show their appreciation for, so they take a bunch of sidewalk chalk and make a path on the sidewalk from their house to their church, writing Frick Father Johnson, Frick Sister Francis, Frick Mr. Billings, Frick Mrs. Kinda on each sidewalk square. Obviously, people notice this and tell my dad's parents. Dad and his sister get the biggest whopping of their lives, and they were just trying to be nice. They knew. I caught my mom shooting H when I was 11. I grew up with basically no rules, so I watched enough television to know what was going on. I told her that I had no respect for her. She beat me with a heavy plastic tetherball racket. SP. She threw me out at 17 years old because I graduated high school and she couldn't afford to keep feeding me. She overdosed in 2008 and came to live with me and my fiance for a year. In that time, she got clean, minus pot, but refused to make an effort to get a job. After my wedding, a year later, my wife told me that I had to force my mom to get a job. I told her that she had 3 months to get a job, anywhere, and that each week, she had to show me applications before and after she filled them out, and that I would mail them to the potential employer. She did this for a week, and then stopped. I threw her out, but not without her taking out a credit card in my wife's name and buying a flat screen TV and a MacBook Pro. My marriage is probably irreparably damaged because of this and some other issues. So yeah, my mother cost me my childhood, thousands of dollars, my self-esteem, and most likely, the woman I love as much as I've learned to love myself. And because there's a chance you're reading this on my MacBook Pro, because you've found another government program, and my little sister's generosity to exploit. And I know you like Reddit. Frick you, mom. You'll die alone. I have a slightly different interpretation for this question. This is something that I did that was very dumb, that I was rightfully punished for. When I was in 6th grade I found a tube of super glue. I was intrigued. I decided to engage in an experiment to determine how often my family actually handled different items in my house. I went around supergluing things. I superglued a picture frame to the top shelf. I glued an old scarf that was in the bottom of my mom's drawer. I glued a lot of things. All things I thought my family didn't use very often. I thought, in my dumb devious mind, that these different things would be slowly discovered over months, and that it would just lead to building confusion over what was going on. It turns out that my mom is actually a very thorough cleaner, and every single item was discovered within 24 hours of supergluing. I was not a smart child. This seems like an endeavor that would be well worth being punished for. That's hilarious, and I'm sad that I didn't think of it. My sister and I were trying to sneak around to get a Mother's Day present, and my mom realized one of us was planning on leaving the house. Neither of us could drive at the time. She wanted to know what we were up to and we wouldn't tell her, which made her upset. She was a single mother with 2 girls in their early teens who seemed to be plotting to sneak out and do something, so it was reasonable that she got quite upset. We still wouldn't tell her what we were up to even after some yelling, so we ended up getting sent to our rooms for the rest of the day. We didn't want to tell her even after the fact because we didn't want to make her feel bad. We essentially got in trouble for trying to get her a present. I was watching an old classic NBA game on YouTube, and my dad walks in my room, sees it and flips out. I got so confused at his ranting and red face. He starts shouting at me, "What the frick? Boy, I'm not going to pay $250,000 or bail you out of jail. I raised you better." He kept babbling on and I still was confused as heck. He sadly shakes his head and says, "I can't believe my son is a criminal. You're grounded for 6 months," and without any more explanations, leaves the room. I sat there for 10 minutes, stunned and unsure what the frick just happened and what did it have to do with Larry Bird balling on my Mac. Mom came home in a week from a business trip and thankfully, as tech savvy, came in my room after apparently getting an earful from dad about the situation. Saw the game on YouTube and laughed out loud. She said dad thought I illegally copied the game from a VHS and somehow put it on my computer. Dafuck. She cleared it up with dad. That was the dumbest thing I've ever been punished for. I said I didn't want to go to youth group anymore. Not church. I knew there was no way to get out of that, but I just couldn't stand going on Wednesdays as well. At least on Sundays I could knit or something and tune out the sermon. I was 13ish and starting to doubt God because my life was quite crappy at the time. My parents were not expecting this, as I was the good child of the family, so they took away TV and my books. This was before internet. They said to was to help me consider what I was doing. It took 2 weeks of the worst boredom I'd ever had and a screaming knockdown throwing crap argument before they relented. I thought I'd won, and then they took me to a Christian counselor, which is like a shrink, only without a medical license, and their solution for everything is you should trust God more. So I went to that once a week for a couple of months before we had another screaming knockdown fight. Thankfully our youth pastor is quite awesome, and intervened, saying you can't force someone to believe. Sometimes you have to let them go and just hope they'll come back. After that I didn't have to go to youth group anymore. Pastor Clint, if you're reading this, you sir are a true Christian. As for now, I'm living at home, but don't go to church except on Easter and Christmas to keep my mom happy. I can stand the drivel twice a year. Any more is pushing it. Almost the exact same story here. However, youth group was on Friday nights. I refused to go one night and I got threatened with my crap being taken away. Turned out they were all empty threats, and we even stopped going to church altogether shortly after that. When I was 18 I worked at Radio Shack during high school college. We had the crappiest 27 MHz cordless phone in the house. It ran out of batteries and received a lot of interference from remote control cars and other phones in my neighborhood. A 900 MHz phone was on sale at work and it had all the features and then some and a digital answering machine. I bought the new phone for my house to replace the old one that was starting to give a lot of problems. So I throw out the old phone and put the new shiny one on the counter hooked up. My mom comes home and kicks me out of the house for throwing away something that was hers that I had replaced with something better. I've still never gotten an apology. My parents have never grounded me, as they don't believe in it. That being said, they've done some stupid stuff before. In 6th grade I got a PSP Slim for my birthday, which I'd wanted for years. Now, the year prior to that I got a Nintendo DS. The first one, which I always bought games for with my own money. Now, my little brother is, and will probably always be a piece of crap. My mother reasoned that because I got a new PSP I had to give my brother my DS. I told my brother to screw off. However, he'd fake cry and manage to get my mom to yell at me and get me to give him my DS to use. I was always pissed off because of this. He would always drop my DS and handle it wrongly, and one day he dropped it so hard the top half broke off. He blamed me. The year after, my big brother and I got matching DS Elites for our birthdays. My little brother began his crying fit again, and again I had to let him use my DS whenever he wanted to use it, even when I wanted to use it. I yelled at him dozens of times for leaving the charger and the DS, which is able to hold a huge charge. He never learned. After several months of this, the DS was fried and wouldn't turn on hold a charge. Apparently, he left the charger in again. I yelled at him, however he was never punished for it. Skip forward a year. My mother and I went to get donuts and coffee from DD. My BB asked for a vanilla donut whilst my LB never asked for anything. We got home, and I gave my LB the donut bag, telling him that the glazed donut was for him and the vanilla donut was for BB. This little crap goes upstairs and gives my BB the glazed donut and keeps the vanilla one for himself. My BB gets pee and pushes my LB, who drops my BB's DS Lite down the stairs, breaking the top half off. My mother blames us for this butthole's behavior every freaking time. Not me, but something I witnessed to a childhood friend. When I was 6 or 7, I had a friend that lived in the same small apartment complex as me. We would ride our bikes around the small complex over and over all the time. She was probably my first crush. Anyway, I started to realize her father was quite abusive. One thing in particular I remember was she went into her house and left the door open. I never went inside, but I waited outside the door. She goes to the bathroom, washes her hands and all. Her father asks if her hands were dry. She responds saying yes, so he feels them, I guess. Most of this I cannot see. I only heard it. Apparently they weren't dry enough because I hear him smack her horrifyingly hard and she started to scream. Someone in there ended up closing the door and eventually I just went home. I wish I would have told my parents about it, but I kept it to myself. Probably wouldn't have worked anyway though. I would get hit almost every night for not eating all my dinner, but that's besides the point. She ended up moving and I was incredibly sad. Her parents told my parents that they would come visit so we could hang out again, but that never happened. I still wonder where she is now and how she's doing. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.